Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Sunday, December 22nd, 2019, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research Channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Alright, guys, well, I reached 1,000 subscribers, and that is just a miracle in my mind. But anybody wants to listen to a guy with a thick New York accent ramble on about these sorts of things, it's got to be nuts. But here I am, and I must be doing something right. Chuck, CF Apps, watches my channel. A few other big shots watch my channel. I like to hear a different perspective on some of these things. And mine is very different. It's even outside the alternative view in some cases. So you'll hear some interesting original ideas on my channel, certainly. And I'll do a separate video on it, sort of like a holiday video in a couple of days. You know, the subscribers go up and down, guys. I don't know why. It's rather odd, but in any case, you know, I'll make sure, like, I had 1,000 subscribers, so I do have 1,000 subscribers. Thanks to all, and it's all you guys' fault and not mine. Okay. All right, well, we're going to cover the quote-unquote giants or large hominids, as I like to call them, in Wisconsin in this video, but I'm going to focus on one of the accounts from this site, which I often refer to. It's like a compiled place for accounts, you know, where they're compiled into one place here. And I just singled one out because it seems to be an overview of the mound areas throughout Wisconsin at a time where I think we get like a more honest view of it. I mean, certainly I don't think you're going to get this from the Smithsonian or, you know, the state website or an archaeological website or anything like that. You're going to get the nice scrubbed down, you know, filtered view of whatever it is. But in any case, the moderator of this site prefaced this thing with this here, which I find very interesting. It's just interesting what he says. And the whole article is rather lengthy, but it's just the details in it are just amazing, and you gotta hear it, so I gotta read it to you. But he prefaces it with this, and he shows this skull, obviously with a vaulted cranium. And I see the aura frontis here with the frontage plate here. I don't know if there's another suture that goes down in the back here, like Homo sapiens, but similar to the raucous skulls where they only have these one, you know, and this is one of these vaulted craniums with rather large eyes and these sunken cheeks here and a large nose socket and just so strangely shaped. But these are the vaulted cranial people, and it's found in a South American museum. It says from Wisconsin, but skull found in Wisconsin mound skulls. Top photo is an anomalous skull found by Mr. Connolly in a South American museum. The general opinion seems to be that they are not the result of medical deformation and are too anomalous to be the result of quote-unquote binding techniques. In addition, some of the skulls have brain vault capacity significantly in excess of modern man. Okay, so they're not brachiocephalic, and that's artificial cranial. Whenever they refer to brachiocephaly, that means artificial cranial deformation. And listen to what he says about it. That's why I'm including it, because it's so interesting. What he says here. Skulls found in the mounds of Wisconsin are orthocephalic, while the Native American Indian skull is brachiocephalic. Okay, so they're not saying that they're dolichocephalic, long skulls like the Paracas people had, the long, elongated skulls like that. That's like a dolichocephalic type. They're orthocephalic, these vaulted craniums, okay, of the Adena and possibly the Hopewell, and, you know, anybody might have inherited the genes, but listen to what he says here, okay, so showing that these people were not of the Native American Indian tribes. However, through crossbreeding, the Native Americans could today carry some of the traits of these people. So, okay, this guy is thinking, and I'm thinking what this guy's thinking, okay, that they crossbred with all these native chiefs that have an extremely large stature, okay, so they carried him as far as they could. And, I'm thinking again, and to refer back to the last video I did on gravitational biology, we heard that in a weaker gravity, cells grow bigger, and in a stronger gravity, they grow smaller. Okay, so the megafauna and these large hominids were designed in a gravity that could accept their larger cells. Okay, so this is why they're never going to bring back dinosaurs, folks. It doesn't matter if they find the DNA in insects in, this petrified resin and everything else. They're never going to bring them back. They're never going to bring back these large skeletons, even if they can extract DNA. They can never bring back any of these people because their cells are designed for a weaker gravity where their cells could grow larger. That didn't mean that things with smaller cells didn't grow in that gravity too. We certainly were there, right? So, but we could cope with the new, stronger gravity. They couldn't, and that's why they died out. And the megafauna died out gradually and in places on the earth that didn't include human overpredation. Okay, so they're never going to bring these people back. They can't bring any of the dinosaurs back or any of these large mammals back. Their cells were too big. They're meant for a different gravity. It's just so obvious. The Wisconsin Mounds, interesting relics of a prehistoric civilization, elaborate systems of defensive works, Madison, the center of an ancient race, their burial places, and their weapons. Madison, Wisconsin, August 9th. The largest prehistoric work in the state heretofore described, and which the Smithsonian Institution has published a complete report. Love to see that. In Fort Astine, near the Lake Mills, so named from the pyramidal mounds found there, which greatly resemble those found in Mexico. Okay, so now we're talking about the temple mound builders, but mounds of all varieties are found in this state, including the barrow type of the Adena and the Hopewell. So let's not mix them up. The temple mound builders came afterwards and were not of the incredibly large stature. They may have been slightly larger, but again, with these people being hybrids of these people who died out slowly, these large hominids from a past where things were more advanced, folks, an ancient past. They went through many cataclysms, according to Randall Carlson. But without doubt, the most stupendous and elaborate system of defensive works in the state are found in the vicinity of this city. The celebrated mounds of Ohio and Indiana can bear no comparison either in size, design, or the skill displayed in their construction with these gigantic and mysterious monuments of earth, erected we know not by whom, and for what purpose we can only conjecture. What the unknown race was That the unknown race was semi-civilized is certain, as art of a high type flourished among them. Carving in stone, especially, was brought to a high degree of perfection. The art of weaving and dyeing cloth was known and practiced, and the color used being invariably red. They didn't have blue dyes until later times, from what I understand. Native Americans did not have blue dye until way later on, mostly red. Madison was in ancient days the center of a teeming population numbering not less than 200,000 souls. It is situated on the northern end of a chain of 5 lakes between Lakes Mendota and Monona and extending south to Lake Wingra. It is built on a chain of hills which slope gently down to the water's edge or end in high bluffs. This was the mound builder's paradise in bygone ages, and the region has lost none of its natural beauty. On the land of George Catterson, 7 miles south of Madison, is a prehistoric fort. It occupies the summit and southeast side of a huge hill overlooking Lake Kagosa. It is bounded on the east by a marsh and the cliffs on the lake on the south. It is undoubtedly a strong position for defense. It is undoubtedly a strong. The fort is square in shape. The 4 outer walls are each 400 feet in length, and from the center of each side, high walls, 300 feet long, stretch out. Inside the fort, about 10 feet from the first line of breastworks, extends a second parallel to the others. In this line, gates were left in the corners, and these were protected by round mounds, the tops of which show evidences of fire. For a few inches below the surface are found quantities of charcoal. In the center are three mounds in a direct line, connected with each other by a thin bank of earth. The tops of these mounds are sunken, showing that they serve the purpose of the caches, quote unquote, being hollow. But in the lapse of ages, the tops have caved in. They say, okay, this is at a time where maybe they couldn't make of it what they are, but they certainly sound like the annular mounds that are found in western New York State and in Canada as well at a sister site. They sound identical to those things, and those things suggested like high production, like mass production on a large scale of something that was going on over there. And they talk about it in this too, I think, but just in a different way with, I think, stone built ovens on like a massive scale, I think. Scattered about inside the second line are 6 rows of earthworks about 20 feet long. A group of 17 burial mounds occupied the northeast corner of the fort, arranged in the shape of a turtle. 2 of these were opened and interesting finds made. In the first mound, open layer of forest mold 6 inches in thickness was first removed. Then 7 feet of yellow clay was penetrated, and a thick bed of ashes and charcoal in which were scattered arrowheads of flint, and pottery prettily ornamented in various patterns was brought to light. Below this was a foot of clay so hardened by the fire as to turn the edge of a spade. Beneath this was a rudely made coffin of large flat stones, probably brought from the lake. Very interesting. Okay, so this pottery prettily ornamented. I mean, was this the cannibalistic giants that L.A. Marzulli was talking about? These highly sophisticated people with pretty pottery. Upon being opened, this coffin was found to contain a large-sized skeleton in a sitting posture, the earth within the coffin having held it in shape. The hardened clay above prevented the least moisture from entering, thus preserving the bones in fairly good condition. At the side of the body was found a curiously carved pipe in a shape resembling a human head with peculiar characters rudely cut on the sides. Near the right hand was an axe of banded slate in the form of an ancient double-edged battle axe, a number of arrowheads, and a gorget of slate. A gorget is a thing that goes around your neck. Okay, so I guess it's a slate neck protector. That's what the gorget is. Okay, so often these are made of stone. This one's made of slate. Near the feet was a jar of pottery which was filled with a black mold. This jar was unfortunately broken by one of the workmen while handling a spade. Another man a few feet away contained a number of arrowheads and 2 axes of the usual groove form, but no bones. In a mound opened in the western corner of the fort was found a square implement of slate, very highly polished, with a hole drilled through the center. Altogether, the fort occupies about 15 acres. It is now covered with a second growth of trees, but that there was once an older growth is shown by the stumps of former forest giants found here and there. Outside the fort, I guess huge tree stumps of large trees that were cut down again. These earth covered with gigantic trees that were all harvested by humans, and this lends to the whole making the large mammals of the Holocene go extinct, but to not in their studies. Okay, of the 76 sites they examined, only 14 contained the bones of mammoths or whatever it is. So what were the rest of these people doing and eating? Okay. Outside the fort, the ground has been plowed, and it is shown that there stood the village under the shelter of its walls. Pottery, arrowheads, and broken axes and flint spades are found here in profusion, as well as great numbers of noodles of iron ore. Indeed, the whole vicinity shows the presence of iron ore in large quantities. Isn't that interesting? The burial place of the town was situated on a land now owned by William Colliday, where there are 17 burial mounds within the defenses. A few feet below the surface of one of these mounds Oops. Didn't mean to do that, folks. Sorry. Take it back. Way up here. Sorry. Again, this is a lengthy article. Okay, so indeed the whole vicinity is shown as the president of Washington. Burial place of the town was situated on a land owned by William Colliday, where there are now 17 burial mounds within the fence. A few feet below the surface of one of these mounds was a round implement of stone around which a slight groove was made, running completely around both ways, thus dividing it into quarters, was found. Upon it are rude characters resembling bird tracks. A highly polished pear-shaped instrument of iron ore with a very small groove at the lesser end was also uncovered. How interesting. A short distance from the fort to the northeast on the farm of Eric Dearson are found strange ovens or fireplaces. All over the field can be noticed stones laid in circles about 3 feet in diameter. These, upon being opened, showed a cavity about 3 feet deep, in the shape of an inverted cone, and the sides are carefully walled up with flat stones. Around the edge on the top of the ground, a space of about 6 inches was left bare. This ran around the mouth, and outside of it the circle of stones mentioned was placed. Inside of these fireplaces were large quantities of charcoal. The owner of the land also found 17 pounds of lead ore in one of these ovens, of which there are about 50. How interesting is that? On this piece of land on the banks of the Yahara River is a large mound in the shape of a war club. This mound was partly open and was found filled with the particles of lead ore. The mud on the river banks was also covered with fine particles of lead ore, which shine like diamonds in the sunlight. All the works described are associated with the people of the fort, as all are undoubtedly the work of the mound builders. How interesting is that? This lead ore sounds like major production going on of lead things, but what lead? Have they found any lead artifacts? What kind of lead production were they doing there? Or they were doing metal processing or something like that? Iron ore and lead and all these odd things would be associated with these people just lends to the mystery more. Following the Yahara River northward to its outlet, Lake Winona, the stream narrows down a width of only a few yards. Breastworks were erected on each side of the banks, thus making it impossible for a party to gain an entrance into the lake, even should they escape the fort further down. Signal stations were established on each hill of the range so that word could be sent from Stroughton to Westport, a distance of over 30 miles, in 20 minutes. One of these stations was situated on a high hill overlooking and separating Lake Wingrup and Lake Winona. The ground is baked hard from the watchfires. Chipped flints, a few arrowheads, and pieces of pottery are found lying a few inches beneath the surface. In an opening in a new road through the hill, a landslide occurred, exposing a hollow place about 6 feet square, which contained the skeletons of a person who must have been a giant in his day. Beneath the hand was an axe of cyanite, finished with great skill and very nicely polished and grooved, which weighed 5 pounds. Further along the hill are 6 burial mounds. This ends the line of prehistoric works on this side of the city, leaving an open space of over 2 miles. Crossing the Yahara on the northern limits of the city, the line of fortifications again appears. The breastworks run parallel to the lake and are about 200 feet in length. A large number of modern Indian graves are situated outside of the walls. Inside the fortifications rises a sacrificial mound to the height of 15 feet. Upon excavating this mound, there was found an altar built of rough stones, on top of and around which are immense quantities of charcoal and ashes, and a pipe-shaped object of slate. A short distance to the north, and seemingly guarding the works, is the effigy of an elk, over 100 feet in length, the front of which small round mounds of sand were placed, but when opened they were found to contain nothing of any interest. 100 yards from the spot was a pottery manufactory, which, judging from the number of fragments lying around, must have supplied the greater part of the country. Okay, so maybe this was conditioning the soil, like the South American Indians used it to make their soil down there with ash and that's how they make this. I forget the name of it, but this is known in South America how they were managing the land and were very highly skilled in agriculture and doing these things. And it sounds like a totally similar thing. And with this mass production of whatever was going on there with lead, and just this is fascinating. The lake at this point throws up great quantities of fresh water, clams. The shells were ground to powder and mixed with sand and clay found on the banks, and this, when baked hard, was formed into vases, jars, and other utensils, many of which are beautiful patterns and exhibit a high artistic taste on the part of the designer. The soil in this vicinity is almost completely covered with fragments of pottery. The soil is covered with fragments of pottery. Well, that sounds to me like they're creating this soil conditions for agricultural reasons. The effigy of some animal bearing a very good resemblance to an elk is situated a few hundred yards northward, in front of which are two small mounds, a foot high and 3 feet across, made entirely of sand. In the examination of the Wisconsin State Hospital grounds, attention was first given to the so-called eagle mound. The mound resembles an eagle with extended wings and is very perfectly formed. The body measures 100 feet in length and expanded wings 300 on each side of the body. The tail is 40 feet wide and the beak is 15 feet in length. Three similar bird mounds are situated in the immediate vicinity. Near the left wing of the eagle mound is a gracefully formed mound in the shape of a deer with branching horns, and further to the north are bear, squirrel, and turtle mounds, and others in the shape of animals now extinct.